Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys today?
Hope you guys are enjoying this wonderful Sunday. Here, I have to say, it's a stunning day outside.
It is. It's very beautiful.
It is. We hope that you're enjoying great weather where you are. And as always, thank you for spending the next hour with us. And today we are going to be talking about spring cleaning your family tree.
Yes. Yes, that is a very important thing that we all need to be doing. I actually started doing it maybe about a year and a half or 2 years before the um the 1950 census came out. And I must say it is very I'm still doing it. Let me put it. Yeah, let's say that. I'm still doing it. So,
I have yet to start. It is on my massive to-do list.
mm-mm.
Um, But there's a couple of reasons why we always encourage people to do it and why we do this ourselves. I think the last real kind of hardcore spring clean I did was right before the 1940 census,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure that everything was correct and all of that good stuff. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons is, you know, as you become more advanced or more knowledgeable as a researcher, you should always go back, go over your earliest and your earliest work or previous work, just to make sure that you have attached the right records to the right people. And I know it always seems as though I'm picking on the Brunsons, and we're not, because we're Brunsons ourselves, but they're a family that's just a great example. So what Donnie and I find that when we do our Edgefield spring cleaning, we realize that there were more than one person with the same name. And I'm thinking, like, how many Frank Brunsons were there? You know, so maybe 10 years ago when we were working on that line, we were thinking what there was one Frank Brunson. There were all these records for this person who may or may not have married more than once. Come to find out, not the same person, two different people who were related to each other. Um, and again, it's just really good practice to just go back and really interrogate your research to make sure that it's correct and that you haven't attached the right records to the right people. And Donia lately has just had one string of curveballs after another that have. Am I over exaggerating by saying they were kind of game changers?
No, you're not. They were absolutely game changers. I mean, Henry, for example, we went all this time. They were game changers, but they helped to explain and understand things. So I think Henry, for example, Henry Yeldale, we went all this time thinking that his mother was Mary Palmore. And it wasn't until the South Carolina birth certificates started to drop that we found out that that wasn't his mother. So I'm looking at this birth certificate and I'm like, well, that's his name and that's his birth date. And yeah, that's his daddy. Well, who is this woman? That's the mother. And so I'm like, oh God, who is Lizzie Harrison? So now, and I have no clue who Lizzie Harrison is. Don't know her age. Don't know. I know absolutely nothing about Lizzie Harrison. So yeah, it was definitely a game changer.
And again, that brings up even more questions because was her maiden name really Harrison? Did
Right.
she remarry? And the person who was the informant for a death certificate, was that the name that they knew her by? Did they put her under her married name?
Well, it's not an informant on the birth certificate. This was a
Ah,
birth,
right. Yeah.
not the death. So this was her. So whoever signed that, I have to look at it again to see exactly who it was that signed. But the bottom line is that this was a whole new. This is just all brand spanking new. Some of the birth certificates have their ages up theirs. I don't think hers had the age up there, so I can't
hmm
get anything when it comes to that. But yeah, that was definitely a kicker, but it explained a lot. Because one of the things about Henry is that, so you saw him in the 1920 census with his dad before his father died and his quote unquote mother Mary, and they were all in the household together. But then in 1930, his father had passed on. Mary had now remarried someone on my grandmother's side. So first Mary was married on my grandfather's side. Now she's married someone on my grandmother's side. And Henry is not in the household. And she has children with this particular man. Well, where's Henry? Henry is with her parents. Now, it makes sense as to why he wouldn't be with his parents, because it shows that both of his parents had died. Both of his father's parents had died. So I'm going through and I'm looking, I'm like, so he's with his grandparents and he's listed as being with his quote unquote grandparents. But then 1940 comes around and now Mary's other husband has died and Mary is in the household with the children that she had with this husband and along with Henry. But now Henry's listed as a cousin. And I was like, what is going on here? And then you see him again, he's never actually listed as family. And it started to confuse me, like, why is that happening? Well, now I know he wasn't technically their family. He really was their cousin to a certain degree. He was their sibling, but he was their cousin too, because Edgefield is crap like that. But yeah, I mean, it was, and now it makes sense. So yeah.
And again, those are all really important, and again, those are really important discoveries and finds to make. Another theme that's, I'm sure, it's not exclusive to Edgefield, when we're going through the census records and we see a couple who are maybe in their 60s or 70s, and then you see a young child, say the age of 10 or under, listed as in our case, usually with our cases, it's listed as a child, and we're like, a couple in their 70s and 60s having a 10-year-old or less is highly unlikely. So it's like, who is this
Yeah.
child? Who is this
Richard.
child? Or again, you can see a 60 or 70-year-old in a household, again, mixed household, but you have this mysterious, really young child with a different last name, and you're like, who are you? You've
You
had a
have
couple of
literally named all of the things that I have gone through during this family tree cleanup.
and talk the audience through how you actually cleaned it up and how you work things out.
I haven't cleaned it up. I I'm still in the process. Certain things, like I said, using Henry as an example again, that particular one was once it came out, it started to explain the stuff that was going on, why he was considered a cousin or whatever, or as our um friend Betty Jenkins says, brother cousin, which is what he was. And there were so many that were like that. But then there was another that I went through. Now I'm going through the dreaded settles line. And I promise y'all, every child that I've gone through has given me question. And I've angered Loretta something severe to the point where she don't want to be my friend sometimes, or she don't want to talk to me. And we go through all of that. So which was one, what was one of them was through the holloways, through the settles. We had somebody up there who someone was listed as a child. I can't remember exactly. I want to apologize. But someone was listed as a child and come to find out it couldn't be their child. And that all came because of the 1950 census. We started to find it. Everything that I'm finding in cleaning up my tree, it's because of new records dropping. So I really should have done this a while ago. Yes, Deborah, the settles is a rabbit hole without any doubt. It's just, yeah. So, but that was my biggest issue, was just kind of going through stuff because new record sets were dropping. I mean, the South Carolina US birth certificates is a new record set. It wasn't around all the time. So that's a new record set. And if you're not using it, guys, you need to get on it because you're going to learn different ages. Just yesterday, I found out that my aunt, her name on the birth certificate was actually the name of her sister that was born after her. That makes sense?
May have to talk people through that one.
Right, right. So, okay, here we go. My aunt's name is Ida Mae. Then she had a sister, her sister, who was born right after her. My aunt was the fourth born, and her name was Ida Mae. She had a sister who was born after her named Lula Mae. Ida Mae was born January 8th, 1919. Lula Mae was born about a little over 18 months later, August 1921. But we couldn't understand before the US birth records started to drop. For some reason, when I would find different things like the Social Security application, other important records like that, they had my aunt Lula born January 8th, 1919, when she was not. So I never understood why that was happening until yesterday. Yesterday, and they're still indexing the 1920 um, U.S. birth certificates, that record set. So I can't pull the actual image like we would search it for anything else. The only thing that's coming up is the actual text, if that makes sense. But I can go and find the image. I just got to go through it one by one in order for me to get the image, which I ended up doing. But the image states that my aunt Ida Mae was actually named Lula Mae, born January 8th, 1919. But then the 1920 census that came out right after she was born the following year, which was a year later in January of 1920, she's listed as Ida M. Yeldale. And then the 1930 census comes out, and you see Ida M. Yeldale and her sister Lula M.
But
Yeldale.
when it came to retirement age, if she, or tried to claim for Social Security, that must have been a nightmare. How can you?
She was well, she died before she could, so
Right.
she died. But my aunt Lula was mistaken as her. So they actually started sending her information for retirement 2 years early because they thought she was her.
Hmm.
Yeah. So though, yeah, you're right. Though there were issues that occurred because of it, but now I understand why the issues even happened. Yeah.
And no answer about how that happened. How you go from being born Lula May, but and then a couple of months later, when you're enumerated, all of a sudden you're Ida May.
It's not even a whole couple of months. That particular birth certificate was filed December 1919, and the 1920 census was done in January
Oh wow!
1920.
So we're talking weeks.
We're talking weeks. We're literally talking weeks that
Someone,
happened. The
someone
only
clearly
thing
had.
that I can think of is that my grandparents decided to change her
uh,
name.
I was going to say someone clearly had a change of mind.
Yeah, they were changed. I think they were going back and forth with the name. And the time that they went for Lula, it was when they filled out
Hmm.
filled out the birth certificate and then decided, you know what? That's not what we're gonna name her. And next thing you know, a month later, she's Ida M. And it's clearly written because I went and found the certificate. I went until I looked at what the certificate number was, looked at the year, looked at what it was, and I had to go from there. And I found that image, and it is clearly Lula.
And again,
Lula May.
You wouldn't have that story. You wouldn't have had that experience had you not gone back into your tree and just gone, just gone through things.
Yeah. And mind you guys, let me say this. Now, like I said, I started cleaning my tree about 2 years ago before the census came out. I had already gone through all that. I just found that yesterday because I was like, why am I getting hints on my aunt and them again? And it shouldn't even be happening. So let me tell you something how our fans are just annoying. I love y'all so much. I do. So AE, she says, we want to know about the Jill Scott interview.
Well, before we get to that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly cycle back around to the subtles to say again, one of the benefits of going through your tree and working through things is we have a new appreciation for them as a family, to the extent that they were looking after other family members' kids. And we don't always know the circumstances of why nieces and nephews and young cousins or whatnot were in those households. Because again, if they were orphans, their parents died before their deaths were registered. Um, but you can just get some really kind of remarkable insights into some of the families. And like I said, for me, for the Settles, the real eye opener was the extent to which they just, if you were a Settles, that was it. If something happened to your parents and they couldn't look after you, you were brought into the household.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's actually, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do this because we've never actually done that, but that's what happened with LL's mom. I'm just gonna put this out there. I'm gonna tell y'all the God's honest truth. If you guys watched Finding Your Roots, you saw when LL, his grandmother, was listed as a high tower, and then close to the end, he was like, "Well, his mom just really didn't think that his grandmother was her mother." So they tested his mother, and come to find out his mother was not a high tower. Well, in doing that, they removed the high tower from his tree. Well, I want to say this to you guys. He was in a high tower. It was his mother that was not a high tower. And it really messed with that entire family. I'm related to the high towers, in turn related, unfortunately, to LL, but that messed up that entire family because they were like, hold on, how are we not this? How are we not that? There's proof of him being connected to them. But because that was done in the manner in which it was, they didn't actually tell them, you know, they didn't let him know, no, it's through your father's side that you're a high tower, not through your mother's side. So it was really crazy. But again, in saying all that, his grandmother took his mother in to take care of her, like he was just saying. They tend, and our families do that now. She could be related. She still could be related. It's just how, you know. But until we get in touch with LL, we won't be able to dig into
Well, again, that may explain how her parents met. If you're saying that biologically his father was either a high tower or had high tower DNA, and his mother is in a high tower household, that's probably how the two of them met one another.
that. Okay, you froze for a minute, Brian.
Okay,
So
but you got the
that's
point,
what happened. Yeah, I
right?
seen that crazy stuff. You froze for a minute. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we did. But we would this is definitely an interactive show today, without any doubt. Very interactive. We want to know, are you guys cleaning your tree? Yolanda is up
Mhm.
here, and
Actually, there was someone who was
I
talking.
know that she's cleaning hers. Hmm?
There was someone who was talking about James Byrd And if it's the one that I'm, because there's so many of them, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, he was a Revolutionary War hero. They were saying the problem with researching the name James Byrd, there were so many of them. And the name itself could
Yeah,
be spelled two, Byrd, Bird. Um, I've researched that family for many, many, many years, and I don't know who the audience member was, but you have my
I
full
got it up.
commiseration. You have
It's
my full
Asha.
Asha. It is literally a nightmare name to research, and the fun of
Oh,
it is
we.
there's more than one James Byrd of that time period who was a Revolutionary War hero. So you have to be really, really careful with that name.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she also said that she was excited for the 1950 census because her parents were born in the late 40s and she found her dad but can't find her mom. And she said she asked her where was she. That's a loaded. That's so loaded. That's so loaded because if you can't find your mom, I don't know about you, but me, all kinds of stuff start going through my head. And sometimes it ain't the stuff that you want to think about. You know what I'm saying? It's just not. Can you hear me, Brian?
I can hear you. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just not the stuff you want to think about. So I just I don't even want to say it because I don't want to make her upset. But
Well, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of thinking what the logical possibilities could be. They could be they could have been visiting family relations who had a different last name, and she was enumerated with a different last name.
it
Um,
could be something as simple as that. Yeah.
mhm.
Thank you, because I couldn't think of, my mind was going a whole another way. I have to watch my mouth sometimes.
Um, and it depends on where the census was taken. If it was taken in a very rural part of the country, it wasn't all that unusual for households to get missed out.
Yeah, it was. She said that it was like everyone that she could have been with was accounted for. So anybody that she could have been with, she still didn't find her.
Mhm.
She said, and we took DNA, and she really is my mama. Yes, we
Oh,
are
and
from a.
yes, yeah. So it may just be a simple case. They were out, they weren't at home when the census taker knocked the door, so their information wasn't recorded, or that house just got completely missed. And
What?
I'll throw another little historical factoid out there. If we're talking about a time, if there was any kind of racial violence around the time that the census was taken,
Mm,
it was not unusual for black people to hide from the census taker.
yeah,
So
that's true. Now
there's
that
that
part is
too.
very true. That's one of the things that I was thinking. But like I said, my mind always go to the really crazy stuff. But Asha, I want to ask you. I mean, what was I getting ready to ask you? You said we took the DNA test. I mean, she's gonna pop up as your mom. Does she carry the DNA for the people that are supposed to be her parents? So
Mhm.
I'm that is something that I'm wondering. She said my grandmother and great grandmother were at the house. So she found her grandmother and her great grandmother, but her mom was not with
Mhm.
them. Okay. Okay. All right. So now Carol is saying, can you put it into context? Sorry, but I'd like to gain a perspective on this. A child losing parents being adopted into a family loses their surname in the process. Is it that they just merge into the surname or legally change it to make it socially easier? I'm just rushing to ask. Forgive my asking. No,
Mhm.
you don't have to are you talking about the LL particular
No, when
situation?
I was talking about a census and you'd had like an elderly couple, but there was this random child that was much too young to actually be their biological child. I think that's what she was asking about. Because remember,
Oh well,
in talking about the
I know.
Settles being a family that brought people into the household. I think it's a different combination of factors. I don't think most black kind of adoptions back in the day they weren't legal in the way that we think about it. They didn't go to a courthouse. They didn't petition to be the guardian or whatever. From what I understand in our family, It was a very informal arrangement. You have a young
Okay.
family member that needs to be looked after. They just kind of rallied and looked after them. I think when we're
Okay.
looking at the census, sometimes the census taker may have misunderstood or didn't ask the right questions and just assumed everyone in that household had the same last name as the head of household.
Well, Brian is going to say just assumed it. I'm going to say they chose to write it. They didn't really give a crap about what was being written. Number one. Number two, some of them, depending on the time period that we're talking about, census takers weren't actually all that intelligent either. They were just doing what they were told that they had to do. Finally, the other thing is for them to take on a family, to take on someone's name, a child to take on somebody's name, it doesn't always have to be an adoption, like Brian was saying. It could be that they were just living in a household, the woman ended up remarrying, and now all the kids now have that person's last name. And I mean, that happened a lot. I just today I was talking with my cousin Yolanda about one family that we don't talk about, that we're not allowed to really mention them out in that way. But the man was too old to be this woman's father, just too old. He was 75 and she was 5. He was just too old to be her dad, but he was listed as her father because he was with her mother. And that is all that she knew as far as who her dad was until DNA stepped into the picture and other things popped up and so on and so forth. And then, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a whole lot to take in. And as far as LL was concerned, I don't know. I don't know why, because for him, his relation came in through his father, not his mother, and yet his grandmother took his mother in. Maybe she did it to make sure that LL was okay. You just never know. We are, let me rephrase that. We are such a caring group of people. We're going, especially back then, our families really stepped up and took care of each other regardless of what the situation was. And I think they got that from slavery, because think about it, guys. You're on an auction block, you get your you're 6 year, you're 10 years old and you get sold. And you get sold away from your parents, your siblings, everybody. And now you're in this strange place with all of these different people. How many black mamas do you know gonna let that 10-year-old just kind of sit there and be on her own, on his or her own? None. You just none. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna see it, they're gonna bring up there. Come here. Come here. I'm gonna make sure you eat. I'm gonna make sure this. Or even worse, you have some, or not worse, or you have some, slave owners who's like, okay, I'm gonna need you to take care of this child now. They just hand the child over to that person. So then that person is all that they know, you know, and that's what it those are we've been doing it forever.
I'm trying to think of any. I don't think there were many instances, at least in terms of the old 96 in South Carolina, where a lot of this happened, where informally kind of fostered or adopted child actually took the surname of the family that adopted them. I knew we come across maybe two or three, but do you think it was? Have you, in your experience, was that common for the foster child or informally adopted child to take the surname of the new family?
Yeah. I mean, they always had that. They always had, or how about Eddie Sr.? He's listed as an adopted child, and he's not.
Oh yeah, that is true.
How
Yeah,
about that one? He's
yeah.
not.
I forgot about Eddie.
Yeah. So I mean, it just, I think it really kind of just kind of all depends on what's going on in the family, who the family likes, if they even like those people. Because I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I don't think that my grandparents. So let me give you some background before I even go through that. Eddie Sr. is the son to my grandmother's sister, and she ended up marrying a Chen and had this son with him. Well, the Social Security application pointed out that his father was a man named John Sr. and his mother was a woman named Margaret Chen. Well, if in Edgefield research, everybody knows that those two families, the Seniors and the Chens, they are literally the only family in Edgefield. There are no other Chens. If you carry the last name Chen, you are related to the Chens. Same with the Seniors. Or if you carry the last name Senior, you are related to the Seniors. Um, so I was contacted by the researcher for the Chen family, and she was like, I'm sorry, there is not one woman named Margaret Chen in my family. Who is this? Now, she came to me because I am a senior. And as we did the search on it and the research on it, that's when we found out that Molly Margaret, she went by several names. Um, she ended up, she was the one that married a Chen. Well, it's looking like that her parents, my great grandparents, did not like her husband. So Molly died young. And when she died, they didn't even put her they didn't even put her married name on her death certificate. They put her maiden name on the death certificate. They put her back to being a senior. Still said she was married, but put her back to being a senior. Now, y'all, I found her as a kid with them. So this is definitely, I mean, not just a kid, a baby. I found her as a baby with them. So I, it's no reason that she is not their child. Not only that, there's a child that is a DNA match to my mother who is coming from that line. She matches right where she's supposed to. So there's absolutely no reason to think that this is not their daughter. In turn, that would not be their grandson. Do y'all know that they put that man or that child at that time on the census record as their adopted grandson? That's how he was listed. They did not like his father. That's the only thing that I can think of. I mean, that's my assumption, of course, but yeah.
And again, unexpected. Again, well, you did this years before you were doing spring cleaning, but again, it's a family history story that kind of comes to the surface just by getting those records.
By digging in. Yeah, by digging in. And yeah, I did find that well beforehand. But I still watch it because of the weirdness of it. So you gotta, when you're cleaning your tree, when you're even putting your tree together, one of the things that I'm doing that I can honestly say that I'm doing with my tree as I'm cleaning it is I'm putting more notes in. I'm documenting more about what's going on. So for example, with the stuff with my aunt, I have a whole write up now. I have it in several places. I have it in my notes section. I have it in the comment section of the birth certificate because I use the birth certificate um as a picture for her. I also went to the actual US birth certificate site on Ancestry, when it pops up and it says add or update information. I clicked on there and I put it there too as a public comment so that everybody will see it right away. Do not add my aunt. Don't say my aunt Lula is my aunt sis because she not. I just want to clarify it right off the break.
But again, more importantly, explaining how a woman who should have been documented on a death certificate as Margaret Chin was documented as Margaret Senior.
Mhm. And yet still listed as married. So
Mm,
if you think about it, when you take a first glimpse at something like that, you're going to think that Senior is her married name until you get down to who her parents are. And then her parents are John Sr. and Lula Peterson. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Why y'all got her married? Like, this is crazy. So they literally had John Sr., who is the guy's grandfather, and her father listed as his father, and then had her down as Margaret Chen, as if Chen is her maiden name, and listed as the mother. So, who knows what happened? Who knows? Maybe dad wasn't taking care of Eddie, and John was the one taking his grandfather was taking care of him. So Margaret decided, you know what? I'm putting this is I'm then my daddy taking care of my son. Therefore, my daddy is his father. You just never know. You just literally never know.
And am I misremembering something? One of our numerous conversations back and forth between work, didn't the 1950 census reveal? I think you had a family that was a dead end. In the 1950 census revealed they just changed their last name.
It's probably a Yeldell, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's when I started getting the Fuller thing. That's what it was. It was the Fuller
That was,
family.
yes.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It was the Fullers, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! This is not happening yet again. But it was.
Because for us, we just assumed the name changing thing was over and done with by about the 1900s.
Not
But
for the Yeldells.
yeah, we're finding it was still going on.
Yeah, we not for the Yeldells. It's just I don't know.
Hmm.
I have
And I
no
think
idea.
the other big thing that you've kind of revealed is not necessarily that we've identified the wrong parent or family group for a family member or an ancestor, but that the mother that we had for them was incorrect. Think
Oh, that was Henry. That
I
was
think
Henry.
now you've had a couple of that. That was like a big theme for you. And again,
Oh yeah, I did.
to explain to the audience, a lot of times in our families there was more than one marriage. So, first wife dies prematurely young, man remarries and has a second family, and sometimes the men didn't wait very long, and it's hard to figure out which children belong, within an age group, which child belongs to which wife.
Well, first of all, we went through that with that whole Lula Tolbert and the
Hmm.
Talberts and the Gilbert and the Gilchrist and those people that gave me the headache to the point where I actually went on our family page and I lost it. I told everybody stop marrying each other, just stop it, just cut it out.
She did.
But I,
Donnie is
I,
not
I literally,
exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating. I went on the family page and I said, when we get this straight, if y'all keep marrying each other, I am done. Stop it. Cut it out. Because this is ridiculous. Yeah, that one gave us all migraine headaches forever and a day.
And again, to
But
explain that one, this was
mm-mm,
three of us because it was also our cousin Loretta Bellamy who was with us. It took us all weekend to figure out six people. So there were three sets of double marriages, and they were all related to each other.
exactly. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing that I had ever seen in my life. And I hated everybody
But
for the
I'm gonna say
entire.
that was probably some of the most torturous research I've ever done. But reading those obituaries, they just they were loving on each other. They were
They
calling
were.
out step siblings and all the rest of it in all of those obituaries. It
Oh,
was a
that's
night.
so sweet.
I know. I had to put a positive on there somewhere. It was a
That's
nightmare
so
to
sweet.
it was a nightmare to research, but that was the silver lining.
Oh, so Yolanda asks, do I think the Yeldells and Fullers are the same? Yes. That's another name that the Yeldells went by. That's all I can say on that one. As far as April, she said that her great grandfather listed himself as the father of his daughter's child that was born out of wedlock. Let me just say, Eddie was not born out of wedlock. But yes, that kind of stuff does happen. and they do those things. It's sad. I just really think, as far as my family is concerned, I just think my grandmother and my great grandmother was a pistol, y'all. Like she was a pistol, and I think she didn't play those games. You know, if she ain't like you, she ain't like you, and I think she let you know, I don't like you. So, and I never met her, but if you on my page, you've seen a picture of my great grandmother. You saw her sitting in that chair. She wasn't playing. That lady had a pipe in her hand in that chair. So
Mhm.
you know, I
So I'm not going to name names for this one, but you even managed, and this was due to your spring cleaning, which is an ongoing process, discovered many times in our research we thought that step siblings had married one another. Again, it's the name thing. So many people with the same name, born around the same time, living in the same place. But we managed to work out that that didn't happen. But you finally
until
found one that is incontrovertible.
nope.
There is no doubt about it.
So let's ask the question to the audience. How would you feel if you found out, even though they're not necessary? Well, okay, we're talking about Edgefield, so somewhere down the line, those two people are related to each other. But they ended up, because I can't remember their names. Otherwise, I would say that but I know who you're talking about. Because it's, I mean, what deal is it gonna make? They're dead and gone. They were like born in the 1870,
Yeah,
before
but
1870.
their descendants may feel a kind of way. You know, they may not
Okay.
even know that.
Okay.
So,
All
but
right. All
they
right.
may feel a kind of way about that.
See, Brian keeps me straight, y'all. So, because I would have dropped the names quick. Anyway, yeah, but we know they're related. We know that they're connected. We just don't know how. But somehow, their parents married. Didn't matter to them. They ended up getting married. They ended up. Oh, I know who it is. Okay, I won't say nothing. All right, because I love one of the descendants, so I won't say nothing. But anyway, yeah, they ended up marrying each other, having lots of kids. So how would you guys feel if you found out your ancestor, your grandmother and your grandfather were step siblings? So step siblings meaning not blood related to, not necessarily. We're going to say it that way. Not necessarily blood related.
Well, as I said in the car when you dropped that little negative bomb in my lap first thing in the morning, was well, at least it wasn't the flowers in the attic situ.
Right. See, I never watched that because I was always told it was scary, but I heard I heard a little bit about it. But they loved each other and they had many kids. Many, many
I mean, I'm not
children.
saying that there's. I'm not again. You know me, I live and let live, and I'm not saying there's anything bad about it. But we know what Edgefield weddings are like. Well, what it's a family thing.
It's a family thing.
Everyone would know that you were step siblings. But I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about some of my white slave-holding ancestors, and there were two or three step sibling marriages back in the colonial period. Um,
So that means that you got these two people that were already married, the mom and the dad. And then your daughter comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm in love with Jonathan. This is just a name. This is not the name. That was just a name. I'm in love with Jonathan." Mom looks at her and says, "What Jonathan?" "Oh, Jonathan. Okay." Not realizing that she's talking about Jonathan that lives in the household
you
with
know,
them,
Jonathan, who's out there, I don't know, getting the hay
cutting the
together,
grass.
feeding the
Right.
cows, whatever.
Right. Cutting the
That one.
grass. Who knows? That Jonathan, the Jonathan that sleeps in the house with you. How are you in love? I'm talking about my brother, mom. Like, what? How do you do that? So now you got the bride side and you got the husband, the groom side. What? How do you tell? Like, it's the most mind blowing research that you could ever do. I think cleaning my tree is worse than research itself. I do. I think that.
Well, it has thrown a lot of curveballs your way. But in
It
some
has.
ways, it also has explained a lot genetically. Some of the kind of wonky lack of DNA matches that we've had on some lines or unexpected DNA matches that we've had on other lines have been answered by this research that you've been doing.
Yeah.
Because it especially using Mary Palmore and was it Lizzie Harrison as an example. If you're expecting that your ancestor's name is Mary Palmer, you're like, why don't I have where are all of my Palmer matches? Why do I have these Harrisons? Who are they? Why do I have them instead?
I mean, I can't say that about them because we ended up finding out that the Harrisons were already related to us. And the sad thing now what's going to be a great thing about the Harrison connection is when I finally find what the actual Harrison connection is. Because as of right now, Harrisons are only related by marriage. But that can't be because my mom does have a lot of Harrisons in her DNA. It's too many. That's the same thing with the Brunsons. They're all popping up as related by marriage. But my mom got Brunsons that are first or second cousins to her. So that don't make sense. You know, and that's their maiden name. That just don't make sense. So, it's a lot. It's a whole lot.
So out of all of your tree cleaning, what's been your best golden nugget that you found? Or have you
Oof,
found one?
I haven't found one. They all get on my nerves. They
Well,
all.
yeah, to be fair, you've had more issues than not.
Yeah, I've had more issues with all of them, and now that I'm in under that settles debacle, because see, everybody who does settles research are like, oh, it's not that hard, but I promise y'all, my grandmother's aunt married Wesley Settles, and they had what, 15 children, 15, 16
Some
children.
somewhere around there.
I am not lying to y'all when I tell y'all I'm like at child number 6. And from the first one to that sixth one, I found a problem every single time. I am so sick of people telling me that the settles are not hard to research. What you're not going to do is tell me that because it's too much. It's too much. It's a mess, is what it is.
I think I said that because I kind of got spoiled with the lines that were pretty straightforward to research, like the lines that went to Fayetteville. You know,
Yeah, but
you know, they,
even
yeah.
then, it's some of those lines that I'm finding that's wrong. It wasn't as straightforward as you guys thought it was. So I don't know. I don't like the settles research. It irritates my soul. Deborah agrees. Thank you. She said yes, they are.
Well, again, to explain to the audience as well, another reason why the subtles are so difficult is because that surname is spelled at least 10 different ways. Settles with an S, without a S, subtles. I can't even, there's so many of them, I can't even remember them all.
Yeah, yeah. I got 8 settles and subtles, but
Oh, Siddles. I forgot
oh yeah, I
Sittle.
did see that one time. Okay, maybe it is 10 because it does take the S off or add the S on, so you can like just change the vowel after
Mhm.
the S, and you'll see a different name. But that's all due to, in some instances, it's due to what the census takers wrote and how
Or
they
heard.
wrote it
You
or
know,
heard.
think about all those
Think about that.
regional, that
Yeah,
those
that
accents.
that accent, those slangs, because that's the same with the Rhymes.
Mhm.
Yeah, rhymes. That's the same with that family. It's that family blew my mind. So
And again, sometimes spring cleaning, you get even more confused than when you started because I'm just again, I forgot about that hot mess with the Ryan's family.
mm,
Um, that 1950 census threw up even more spelling variations.
yes, it did, and it also added more children.
Yes, it did.
You got kids that you was like, ho, who is that? So Betty Jenkins says Bertie County is North Carolina is actually the same as Edgefield. Everybody is your cousin 10 times over.
I'm going to throw in Northampton County and Halifax County, North Carolina, too.
Yes, sir. Yes, they are. And Asha throws in Granville County. She said, I call it related anyhow. Just some people I am related to on every side. Yep. My mom. So my mom is so bad. Let me tell you how bad my mother is. My mother is so bad um, that her parents are related to each other. Her grandparents on her mother's side are related to each other. And then my mom connects to both of Moses Williams' children. When I tell y'all there is absolutely no way, it's almost impossible not to be related to my mother.
Mhm.
My mom is related to herself at least 6 different times. So
And again, thinking about Edgefield, thinking about my mother's mother, her parents were second cousins, both descendants of Moses Williams,
yeah,
both of them.
yeah, yeah, and that's it is what it is. You know what?
And
I'm this person. I won't say his name because he doesn't want to claim this. But one of my sons, I won't say which one because he doesn't want to. He don't believe it is. So I won't say which one. But one of my sons ends up being my cousin because of Moses Williams. My son tested, he tested, and I'm tested, and we were all on the same area. And on Ancestry, I can say that much. My son's DNA shows two people that he shares on both sides of his family. They are his cousin on his mother's side and on his father's side. Now, normally that's not a problem. It could have been, one on the mother's father's side, the other on the father's mother's side, whatever. But number one, because my mother is related to herself, that's almost impossible. And number two, and this is the most important part, both of those people come from Moses Williams. I know it for a fact. So he ends up being my cousin. He hates it. He was like, no, we're not. But yeah, we are. We are. So let me see. Andrew Blow says his great great grandfather was from Northampton County, North Carolina. Betty Jenkins said, wow, I guess she's talking about from my mom. Yeah, my mom was something else. My mom's DNA is a monster. And Asha, she says, I haven't found out that my parents are related to each other, but the room is really tight. Yeah, I mean, once I found it out, when you start looking at it, like I said, with my mother being a direct descendant from not one but both of his wives, it's nothing else that you can do.
you just say it is what it is.
It is what it is. That's it. That's that pretty lady right there. Y'all see my mommy?
So in the last minute of the show, just because an audience member did ask about it, um, Donnie and I had the pleasure of being interviewed by Miss Jill Scott in her kind of team for her podcast, and I will hand it over to Donya.
I don't know if y'all know this, but I got to be probably the biggest fan of Jill Scott. So to know that we were going to be able to be on her podcast was just a dream come true for me. And I didn't say this to them, and I should have, but the thing is that I claimed it at the beginning of the year. I was like, and I claimed it to her on her Twitter feed. I was like, I'm gonna be on you either I'm gonna be on your show or you gonna be on my show, and we gonna talk. And it was like magic, and it happened. And I think it was one of the best shows that Brian and I have ever done. Um, I it I loved it, and we really blew their minds on the things that we talked about. We talked about genealogy. We talked about why it's important. We talked about what it is that you can find. We touched on a lot of different things that most people that you don't touch on, and they were bold enough to even come out and just ask about Gates and just talk about African ancestry and talk about truth. I think that's why I really, really, really enjoyed that show, because that show was completely and totally about truth.
Yeah, no,
So
it was a great conversation.
it was when it's available, when it's on release, we will let you guys know. Is all I know right now is that it'll be released sometime in June. But and it's on Spotify, so get your get or wherever you do your podcast, get your podcast downloads ready, and look up J.Ill. And you know what? Go and listen to it, because they had some great shows. Really touched on everything. So definitely go listen to the J.Ill podcast. It's awesome. It's an awesome podcast. Their first season, they did something every single Wednesday. They didn't stop until November. So we're talking like 40 some odd weeks of shows. So definitely go check it out. But yeah, that was the show, AE.
And I still suspect you are floating on cloud 50.
Let me tell you, I got my adrenaline was so high yesterday that when it started to go down, I was beat. I was tired. I was so tired because I couldn't believe that I was sitting there looking at probably one of my favorite singers of this time. I couldn't believe that I was sitting there looking there and talking to her and just everything. So yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
I said,
It was
for us, great way to kind of sort of almost end the week with
it,
this is
it
us
was.
actually ending the week.
It is. It is. This is the best way. So yeah, we're out of town. We can't a time we can't even talk about next week's show.
So we will see you right here next Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, I'm Donya.
I'm Brian.
And
Have a good day.
yes, enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.